Hope on the Hard Road podcast, where you and your family can find community, find encouragement, and find hope for the road ahead.
Keep your heart open because hope is eternal, and just you can live in that hope bubble. It will keep you moving forward.
Dr. John Trainer said children are not a distraction from important work. They are the most important work. I'm not trying to make him to be somebody different, but make myself different, because Anais Nin, I think, is the one that said, we do not see things as they are, we see things as we are. And so the change has got to happen here.
Today we continue our Speller series and are joined by Paulette and J Brad Britton. Paulette and J Brad have a 24-year-old autistic son with apraxia named Sam. For years, his intelligence and humor was missed. That changed when he began using spelled communication to share his thoughts. Paulette has spent years connecting cutting-edge autism research with families who need it. J Brad, a leadership mentor and business executive, brings a father's honest reflections to the conversation. He talks openly about what it means to lead, learn, and show up when your child's needs don't follow the rulebooks. Together, Paulette and J Brad have become thoughtful voices on presuming competence, advocating with compassion, and holding on to hope on the hard road. Their story is featured in the upcoming book, Real Words with Sam, which includes Sam's own writings, his ideas, his humor, his voice. Let's listen in as we hear Paulette and J Brad's story.
Oh, hey guys, we are so glad you're here. Paulette and J Brad, this is an honor and we're excited.
Thanks for inviting us. Appreciate it.
For those that don't know you yet, we would love to hear a little bit about your family. Just tell us where you're from, what you guys are up to. We'd love to hear more.
We're Texans originally, so I don't know. I might explain everything anybody needs to know. I don't know. But we both grew up in Texas and been here in California. You moved out here in, 93, right?
Uh-huh.
Been in California for quite some time here in Southern California since 2002. So that's a little bit about, just a little bit about that.
Our entire family lives there except one person. So, yeah.
We have two wonderful children, Madison, who's 27, just married about a little over a year ago, and Sam, who's 24. And my mom lives with us now. And she says he's a big blessing, and it gives us a lot more freedom than we would normally have, because she could be here with Sam and gives us chances to do things like go to your gala and those type of things.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about Sam and maybe some of the, the whole process of him, his diagnosis and being able to see some of that journey as well.
Well, Sam was, hit all his APGAR scores, typically developing, and then he has regressive autism. We got his diagnosis from the San Diego Regional Center. And like most people, didn't know anything about it, right? And so I get on my flip phone. Yeah, right. I call my sister. I leave her a message and I say, hey, Sam just got a diagnosis of autism. I don't know anything about it. I'll be home in 30 minutes. By the time I get there, have something in my email.
Wow.
And my older sister, Suzanne, and by the time I got home, she had some information, resources, whatever she could find. And that's where the journey started. And that typically is still how it goes. We just don't stop. And I'm competitive. Okay. I was, my God-given talent is athletics. And, I decided that was my new arena, and we're just in it to win it. That's just how we live. And then you just have to build your network, and learn. And all of that is so much easier now because you have access to information. And it was just, 22 years ago, it was just different.
Yeah, absolutely. So not a lot of people, unless they're in our world, understand apraxia and how that affects, how would you explain it to someone hearing that for the first time? And how does that affect and reframe your expectations when you're working with your son?
Sure. And in fact, what I'll do is I guess I can share how I learned about it.
Yeah.
And what it is that I learned and we learned. So like a lot of families, we tried everything, right? anything that came along that, oh, this other person that we know that their child made these developmental steps from this particular therapy or this particular supplementation or, whatever it was. We tried lots and lots of things. And I had gotten to the point where I was a little cynical because things that seemed to really help other kids for whatever reason, Sam made minor improvements. So we're talking, going to other countries and doing stem cell programs and, everything else. And so in around 2018-ish, I guess it was, Paulette said, I want to go to this symposium on Thousand Oaks. It's about facilitated communication or spelled communication. And I didn't really do any homework or research or what it was about necessarily. She had done some and had some hope in this idea. So anyway, we went to this symposium and it's at a college up there, and we walk in and there's a few hundred people there maybe, and there was two people over there that Paulette recognized. One was a young man named Elliot, who is a young man with autism, Sam's age. I had only met him maybe once when he was 7 years oldish, something like that. And Paulette was friends with their family more than I was at the time, still. And Julie was the coach, the person that had been working with Elliot in this spelling thing. And I didn't know this, but Paulette says, there's Elliot over there, right? And I hadn't seen Elliot in quite some time. But Elliot's has pretty profound autism. A lot of the symptoms that you would know, flapping, making loud noises and bouncing up and down. And that's how I remembered him. And that's kind of how I saw him there. Paulette waves. And Julie says, Elliot, I think you know these people. He looks over at us, and I could tell if there was recognition there or not recognition. But Julie pulls out, she puts this in front of him. Okay, not this exact one, but something like this. And he starts, while he's talking, saying some words and sounds, he starts, hitting letters. And we can see what he's hitting over a period of, 90 seconds to 2 minutes. We live in a town called Fallbrook. That's important for this story, you'll understand. And he types out, and Julie's writing down the letters he's typing touching, so we can read it all. At the end, he types out, hello, fellow Fallbrookians.
Oh,
the North Life and Times of Sam Britton these days.
Mm.
Wow.
I was blown away. I wouldn't have expected to see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyway, at that seminars, when we saw kids that, used to have videos of them as children banging their heads against things and just completely disruptive. And now I'm sitting there seeing them 7, 10, 12 years later, sitting at a computer, people asking them questions and typing out answers and letting this computer speak for them.
Amazing.
That's what I learned about apraxia. Apraxia is when the brain says, hey, body, do this. And the body says, no, I'm going to do this. A completely different thing. Most people know somebody who's had a stroke. You tell the person tells their arm, hey, go pick up that fork. And they can't do it. Yeah. Right? Their body just doesn't do what they say. Mentally, 100% clear, everything with total clarity, but body not cooperating. And that is apraxia. 67%, according to several studies, 67% of people with an autism diagnosis, especially nonverbal or unreliable speakers, have apraxia. That's what we learned about our son. It has nothing to do with what he's thinking, even though we heard things when he was very young. I'll let you even tell that, I guess, than his kindergarten teacher. We listened to the experts. They told us that he would never be able to learn and he would never make it to this point or that point.
The neverers.
Right.
Yeah, there's a whole group of neverers.
and they're generally, or it used to be more than now, is starting to unravel, but considered the experts, right? But now after, having several years it took for Sam to get to the point where he could actually say things in his head, how the spelling sessions work. It's a controlled environment. They'll read a paragraph or a story that's age appropriate and then ask questions about it, and Sam took a while, several months before he really was able to do things like, read a story about the Beatles and name one of the Beatles. And Paul, Ringo, and he knows the Beatles, right? He knows the good music.
Wow.
Beatles, Beach Boys, and Jimmy Buffett. That's
Okay.
That's what we learned about apraxia. And as far as the experts talk about Sam's IEP at kindergarten, I think that's interesting for people.
So kids in California, if they have a disability diagnosis, they can go into the school district at age 3, right? So Sam's going into kindergarten. There's this IEP, they've done all this testing, right? And there's the psychologist, and there's the OT, and there's a speech therapist, and your teacher, and a myriad of people. The psychologist starts out and reads the history. Sam is a 5-year-old male. He lives with his parents. He's got a sister named Madison. He's got brown hair and brown eyes and an IQ of 50, which is mental retardation. I mean, it was like he has brown hairs and brown eyes. This is the trajectory of his life. I mean, it was all kind of in that thing. And it was very difficult for me to hear the rest and be a part of the IEP after she went.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because I've never thought of Sam that way. I saw him even as parts of him his skills started to fade away, in reverse. Still seeing him try to problem solve and do things that I don't think you could do if you had an IQ of 50. But anyway, so that's when the Neverwheres really, kicked off that, so they make you think that he's not going to ever, right?
Right.
And the IEP was over and everybody left, and his K1 teacher, Kathy Lockridge, a very seasoned special education teacher, sat me down and said, Paulette, I know mental retardation, and that is not Sam. Don't you believe it? We have spent the better part of our next 20 years with this diagnosis living in the hope of what Kathy said.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's forward facing. That's not beating yourself up. What did I do? What didn't I do? What is my fault? What is, all the thing, the blame game. We didn't spend a whole lot of time taking that on. Like somehow we were at fault for all this. Look, this is the life, the hand you were dealt in life. Play the cards and win. Mm-hmm. And so that was how we proceeded in, building our tribe, integrating our families in Texas. Before we had kids, I grew up in a small town with both sets of grandparents, a set of great-grandparents, all my aunts, uncles, cousins, first, second, great aunts and uncles. We all lived within driving distance of each other. Mm-hmm. And it was a very awesome experience growing up. I wanted my kids to have as much of that as they could. And so I told Brad, I said, I don't care what we have to do, what we have to give up. We are going to make sure from the word go that when we have kids, they know their family. No. Our family has always been a part of the process and that support team. Not everybody has that, but we're fortunate. We made an effort to cultivate that.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you bring up, even for those of our loved ones that have delays cognitively, the honoring of them as a human being is so central and so important. And so I love that you bring up, there's no ceiling. They are who they are. Let's honor them where they're at and push for what they can do. That's what you guys have done. There is this saying called, presume competence. And you guys, I'm sure, can speak a lot to that as you have been on this journey. It's a powerful lesson to learn. Do you guys want to share about that?
Yeah, that's a 2-hour podcast.
I'm sure.
Episode to get into that. I guess what might be interesting to anybody listening is in business, that has been a mantra. Mm-hmm. Finding hidden talent in people, and it's something that I feel like I built a kind of a good reputation on, but I completely missed it at home for years. If you treat someone, they become how you treat them, right? There's an old quote, it's attributed to Goethe, but I think it was from someone else. But it says, if you treat an individual as he is, he will remain how he is. But if you treat him as if he were what he ought to be and could be, he will become what he ought to be and could be.
Yeah.
For years, since you're not really sure if Sam's understanding things, he might be 15 or 16 years old, but most people, including us a lot of times, or me, I can speak for me, would talk to him like he's 5, or talk to him in, third person, Sam needs to do this or something like that. Or, hey, dad's going to do this, as opposed to just using regular pronouns. Like, I'm going to do this and you should do that. Even now, listening to people who don't really know Sam very well, talk to him when they understand he's autistic and realize he's very reliable in his verbal communication. He's talking all the time. I mean, almost every second of every day. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration. Something's coming out of his mouth, but what is it? 12%, 8% of what he's actually coming out of his mouth has anything to do with what he's actually thinking or what he wants to try to communicate. And sometimes he says exactly the opposite of what he wants to do and proceeds to do the opposite of what he said he was going to do. Or he'll say he wants to do something and can't get his body to do the thing that he's saying that he wants to do. And sometimes he doesn't say what he wants to do and his body doesn't do what he wants to either. And trying to decipher, decode, all of that is hard. But back to the idea of presumed competence. The first time I watched one of the coaches, learning coaches, spelling coaches, work with Sam, it was a blow to me almost how they treated him. No question in their mind that he could understand what they were saying, that he could do what they were asking him to do, even to the point where they would say, Sam, hey, listen, I know it's really hard for you. I know it's hard for you right now to take a breath and relax and concentrate on this. But I also know that you can do it. I know you're super smart. I know you got this, and they treat him like that. And what I've just kind of come to believe is as a greater worldview now, in this, in the book I've written about our experience with Sam, this is a part of it. Even if someone isn't hearing and isn't learning and can't process everything that we're saying, if we treat them that way, A, it's a dignity thing.
Yeah.
And B, it's highly likely that they can understand at least a lot more than what we think they can. And possibly, like in our son's case, understands deeply what it is. But probably the most important part, it changes how we see them.
Yeah.
But it changes us as much as anyone else. And that's a pretty big deal.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned, and for those that are listening to the podcast, there's a board that he uses to spell. And that kind of ties in with that apraxia because they work on, right? So do you want to share just a little bit about what it looks like when they're working with an individual to be able to spell and to be able to communicate?
Well, I have an example that I use when I explain this to people.
Yeah.
They say, okay, think about all the skills that take motor memory, because when you think about what apraxia, what it is, when your brain has it has the ability to plan and it has the ability to coordinate movements, but it's not doing that, right? It has the thought to do it. And where the information goes into the brain of the understanding, everything they hear, everything that's ever been said to Sam, about Sam, around Sam, is intact. That part of his brain. It's executing something about it, which is where all the detours in the brain are that make that movement and make that impossible. And so, okay, going back to my sports life, volleyball, that's one of my sports. I can remember we had one of the greatest coaches in elementary school. When you're learning to hit and approach the net, the first thing you learn is footwork, right? And then you add your arms, right? So everything is left, right, together, jump. Go back to the 10-foot line. Left, right, together, jump. Go back 10-foot line. Over and over and over. Then you do other things in practice. But the next thing you come back, left, right, together. Eventually you add the arms, your swing.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about coaching people's motor planning for spelling, it's exactly like coaching the body to do something athletic like that. It doesn't matter what it is. If you are a pianist, there's a reason why they say it's just like riding a bike.
Right.
Because if you rode a bike and you didn't ride it for 10 years, pretty good chance you can still ride a bike, right? Because you have the muscle memory. Same thing with playing piano scales. If you ever played a piano scales, your teacher told you a million times, made you do it a million times, and then you were able to do some other things. You sit down at the piano, the very first thing you do, if you hadn't played in 10 years, is a scale. I mean, that's just what you do, right? And so the coaching is the same way. So they graduate from stencil boards where they have a pencil and they drill a hole through the stencil letter, through the A, through the B, through the C. And these are creating motor pathways, right? Where they're able to transfer what they want to a motor movement, right? So it takes like 100 muscles to coordinate one utterance to come out of your mouth.
Yeah.
That is a lot of motor activity going on. And if you have problems in the motor, that's an issue. So what can we do? Well, we practice. We do motor drills, right? That's part of what we do. And then then they graduate to a full stencil with 26 letters, and then they graduate to what we saw as this laminate. And then eventually you hope what you graduate to, if it's the best for the person, is an app on an iPad and use a keyboard, right? And so that's what it looks like. So part of the coaching is not is coaching your eyes have to move. That's part of the motor. Your eyes have to be able to move from one letter to the other. And sometimes it gets stuck. And so you coach the eyes. Go, 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 move, 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 next letter. You give them verbal commands to coach, go to the next letter. You keep encouraging them to do the next thing. And that's what coaching a speller looks like. It's encouraging their eyes. It's encouraging their hand to hit the right thing. And that brings the motor demand of communication down really low, from 100 muscles to just back and forth movement to touch a letter. When you bring the motor demand down, the cognitive can go up because you kind of, there's a battle going on, right? And so Sam has an extra battle in that he's got some language, right? And so he has to make his self not say the thing that is going to come flying out of his mouth, and then engage his finger and engage the brain to get the right information. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So the coaches are they're like an octopus. They've got all kinds of stuff going on at the same time. What they are able to do to support and coach communication is almost miraculous.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. So appreciate this, because that was a good explanation of how much detail it is. And, one of the things, I'm a teacher, so you nailed something. First off, belief. I mean, that was kind of a question ago, having belief in the people you're working with, children, anybody that you're with, they're going to rise to that level of belief and understand it. But then the other side of it is the explanation of all this anxiety that goes on, because anxiety creates blockage for true knowledge and what's really in the brain. I think we have no doubt all of the parents that have kids with disability, there's so much intelligence trapped with anxiety, autism, but anxiety in particular. You're describing it with these spellers. How do I simplify this so that what's really in there that's trapped in there comes out? So appreciate what you got going on there. Like I said, this is a series, so we've heard how much time and detail it takes for them to start really getting language out, the patience that's there, the continual belief, the not being discouraged, recognizing this is a journey and it takes time. And like I said, a friend of mine, he just talks about 7 years, and now the breakthroughs are starting to take place, where language is coming out and the depth that's in there. And I know I've talked with J Brad about some of the stuff Sam said is just the depth that's in there, and just walk us through that process of touching to now where the simplest motor movement so that it can get out to now all of a sudden what's really in their soul and heart is coming out as they're spelling it.
Yeah, well, the way that the lessons work, depending on how long it takes him to, basically get regulated, just get relaxed where he can actually do anything. Because there'll be times where in an hour-long spelling session, it's 45 minutes of just trying to get regulated, or longer, or sometimes just never getting fully regulated.
Yeah.
One of the things that Sam told us through one of his spelling lessons is that they asked him a question like, what's one of your superpowers? He says, I can listen to things while I'm talking.
Yeah.
And we noticed that sometimes they'll be reading the story, and Sam, you would think he's not even in the room and mentally, like he's talking, words are coming out of his mouth, he's messing with the blinds or something, getting up, walking around. The coach will just read a story, just read it and just assume that he's standing there staring at her, absorbing it, because apparently he can be in the next room and that he can be reading the story and he's absorbing every little bit of it. And so in many ways, I can't do that. A lot of things that he can do and things that he knows that I didn't know. What we see sometimes in his spelling lessons, I think a question people ask is, what has surprised you about what you see when he's doing these lessons? Well, we're surprised nearly every time.
100%. Every time it happens.
Yeah, when he gets to the point where you got to get past the simple things, like just they'll read this few paragraphs and they'll say, okay, spell. And they pick a few words from the thing to spell. Sam, he crushes that. I can get him to do that when I do my lessons here with him at home. He crushes that. And then they'll ask very, very simple questions that are directly out of the story, like what year did something happen? And he'll type in that, or what, name the four Beatles, John, Paul, George, Ringo. And then you get to a point where there's like a multiple choice. There's different answers it could be. Then you get to the point where it's called a semi-open, where the answer is not exactly in there. Maybe the story is about something that happened in Belgium. And the question will be, name another country in Europe. Then you'll type in France or Italy or, something like that. And it's kind of a prior knowledge type of thing. But the ultimate goal is to ask a question where the answer is nothing in the story. There's nothing whatsoever in the story. It's an original thought from the person's mind. And I can still remember the very first time we saw one of these for Sam. But the question that was asked is, what is something that you like to do? Right. Well, the answer to that wasn't in the story. So he proceeded to methodically type out, or this wasn't touching, he was using the stencil, right? He was putting a pencil through a stencil. What he wrote, and this is, mind you, this is the first original thought that we ever heard from our son in 20-something years of life. What is something you like to do? And he wrote, relaxing in an easy chair.
What?
Exactly. Now, we have a recliner in the den, living room.
That we call
a recliner or a lazy boy. Never have I called it an easy chair in my life that I can recall. But somewhere he pulled relaxing in an easy chair. And that's not a very profound thing, obviously, but that's the first thing. But he said unbelievably profound things about wealth. True riches have nothing to do with money. You can have money and be poor in spirit, or things like that. He said, and that's just surface stuff.
Yeah.
But every time he says things, it just blows us away.
It's not surface level, in our opinion. Like I have goosebumps right now, you guys. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful that there's this unlocking that happens with spelling.
Sam takes a class at the Miracosta College Adult Community Learning Center, and his high school TP class went for a bit, and he continues to take a class there. There's a lady there that works for a school district in San Diego County. And so she is there with some of those students. It's a coastal town out of Carlsbad. And she has seen Sam, right, over the years. Now, when he was part of the school district, he wasn't spelling. And so they did a lesson, and we videoed Sam spelling his lesson that they had to present, and it was a music thing. She watched him spell on video, and after that class was over, she came to me. She was bawling her eyes out. She has been an aide in a school district for decades, and said, "That has changed me forever."
Yeah.
I will never think that these students that I work with don't know things or incapable or whatever. Just watching him spell one time changed her. And I think that is what we're starting to see snowball now. The evidence shows.
Yeah.
And therapists, school districts, and families can no longer assume certain things. And that's not true for everybody, but presume competence. Believe they can first. Start with, start with what they can do, build on that instead of, oh, we got to fix all the broken stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different way of thinking.
Absolutely.
And that things can be done differently. The intelligence can be established and displayed in different ways, breaking open the barriers and just saying, let any way they can communicate and show their intelligence be acceptable, embraced, and celebrated. One of the things along this journey is coming up and thinking about it. I know it's an emotional thing. So much is in there. And especially, I know, talking to J Brad, that all of a sudden you're aware how much is in there and then bringing it out. How is that emotionally for you as parents, but also for Sam, knowing all those years stuff's trapped inside of him? Has he shown that he's been discouraged, or the frustration of trying to get this out and not being able to? Because I know it works on both sides. Yeah.
Yeah. You can imagine, think if you were a deaf or hearing impaired person and the way that you had to communicate using sign language.
Right.
The world says, I'm sorry, we're going to tie your hands and figure it out. Right? You have to go on about your day. We're going to zip tie your hands together and you need to figure out how to communicate a different way because, that's not what we accept. And so that's what they're asking. I mean, we should have all the people who work with our kids spend half a day from the time they get there till right after lunch. You can't speak to communicate. I don't care if you have to play charades. I don't care, whatever you have to do, but you have to get your work done. We're still expecting this to be done, but I'm sorry, you can't, the form of communication you use is unacceptable. See how quickly frustration rises. Yeah. Because that's what we're seeing in behavior, the frustration that nobody understands me. Well, who of us, you don't have to have autism to be frustrated by that notion when people refuse to understand you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
it's such a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. On the positive side, what have you guys seen with his now expressing himself in a way you can understand and the emotions that you've seen with that?
Well, I just think he's, he now knows that he at least has an outlet to be able to communicate with us. And I feel very strongly, in fact, I know he knows now that we know how smart he is.
Yeah.
And it's different. I mean, the way we interact is different. The way I talk to him is different. It took me a while to scroll back in some text messages to find, but my daughter takes him to his spelling lessons sometimes. And this was just about 2 weeks ago, looks like, that they asked him a question. Well, they asked our permission first. They wanted to do a normal lesson and ask some questions around what their experience spelling is like. Maybe they're making some promotional web copy or something for their service. What he answered, life became so much brighter once I learned how to express my truest self through spelling. And just, I get emotional because not because of that, but because, wow, how we misunderstood him, underestimated him for so long. And then I think about the thousands and thousands of people that have come before Sam that never learned this, the thousands and thousands that are out there now who are in their teens, 20s, 40s, 60s, people who may be processing everything, and how hard that life is. And sometimes Sam can be very challenging. And I have to sometimes just take a breath and say, this is harder for you than it is for me right now. But we get to be in his shoes, as frustrated as I am because we need to go somewhere because we're running behind. Him knowing that we need to go just as much as I do, him wanting to go, him not wanting his parents to be frustrated with him, but just the inability to actually do the thing. I can't think of it for very long to dwell in it because I think it just start to make me sad, more and more sad.
Focusing on that literal bright spot. Things are much brighter. That's the place to stay and to be in, the place to move on from. Because I can imagine how hard that would be. Absolutely. We've seen it a few times in our life too.
Well, and being aware whenever challenging with our children, Sam, our daughter, same way, it's that disability and how much they don't want to be a challenge. They're stuck. They're stuck in something and they're trying to express. And the more impatient they get, the more anxiety that happens, the less they're going to likely to be out. And they're just...
The harder it is for them to focus and to do the thing. It's a spiral.
And it's just that the grace that is needed in those moments that are the hardest by us parents, because they don't want to be there.
Right. Grace for everybody. Grace for yourself. We're all trying hard.
Yes.
You know, and that's what I would say. God is God and we try hard. You know? I mean, that is just, but you know, there's just, it's just hard. Families are considered successful by the way that the children behave, right? I mean, they're looked upon as a good family because their kids mind, because their kids behave, because they're, and then you throw this in here, and not that we feel like we're bad parents, that's not at all. And no parents should feel this way, but the behaviors are the behaviors. It's not like you could parent that out of them, right? You still have to parent the child and all that. But I mean, you know, grace on all ends, because we would all like for this not to be the challenge that we're challenged with. However, we have to do what we have to do. So grace for everybody all around, because we're all learning. We're all learning.
Love that.
What advice would you have for new families as they're navigating their journey?
I would say start building your tribe early. We're fortunate that we had family members that have almost our entire family. I mean, they have supported us. They have loved us through us. We've been able to go on vacations because they watched our kids, you know, all of those things. But you know, you're going to need to build a tribe around you as you go. And don't regress into your own house because it's easier. Oh my gosh, it's so much easier in this controlled environment. But you know, it's like anybody's kids not acting appropriately in a restaurant. Well, people have attitudes about that you shouldn't take your kid to a restaurant if they don't behave. But on the other hand, how do you ever get your kid to behave if they can't practice in the restaurant? You know what I mean? It's like both things.
Exactly.
I would say if you have a church family, the people that will stick with you, let them. And get the help you need. Network. Like you said, it's a journey. I'm a sprinter, and it is not helpful. This is a long distance. This is an Ironman, is what it is. And you need to, you know, look at it that way and pace yourself. And one of the other things I always said, there was a lady that I met who family was in the military. Husband was in the military. She worked with kids with special needs in New York, and they moved down here and they were working at Camp Hilton. And I was doing some things with her. And one of the things she said from her experience, she said, Paulette, from my experience, if 100 families start the race, one finishes, you be the one. I encourage families to just keep going and, you know, celebrate the wins. You're going to throw everything at it and see what sticks, and some will, some won't. But build that support group around you and be the one every day to finish.
My advice would be simpler: patience and presence. You know, that it would be about that interaction. The way I talk to Sam now, I wish I would have known to talk to him and treat him before. Before. And this is not just for if you have people in your family or loved ones that have special needs like Sam does. But when someone wants attention, give them 100% of that attention. Be fully present. I'll be in here working. I'll be on a meeting like this, and Sam may come into my office if I forgot to kind of do the lock on the door. And it is extremely challenging, and I wish I could say, I do this every single time, to take my focus and attention away from whatever it is that I'm doing, turn, face him, and he may not even really have anything to say. He may even not even want to be acknowledged necessarily, but he's there. And I don't know exactly why he's there. He may just need someone to look at him, to know that he treat him like a human with the dignity that all humans deserve.
What is just one thing that you want to share with our listeners to help bring hope for the road ahead?
I mean, keep your heart open because, hope is eternal, and just you can live in that hope bubble. It will keep you moving forward. I have a small nonprofit project that I called the Autism Legacy Fund that is small but very specific. And one of the things that we did was a young homeschool girl. She did not have a way so we made sure that she had a device and she had the app and that she had all that she needed to be able to communicate, because she shouldn't be hamstrung if her family can't afford all of that. It's lovely to see organizations get behind this.
Be fully present. You never know what they're thinking. Sometimes they can just, it's obvious because it's a repetitive thing, but I would say just take the time. Dr. John Trader said, children are not a distraction from important work. They are the most important work.
Mm-hmm.
I would say take that kind of mantra and not try to worry about them, but worry about me. Not try to make him to be somebody different, but make myself different, because Anais Nin, I think, is the one that said, we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. So the change has got to happen here.
Yeah, there's so much here, such a journey. Thank you for sharing and empowering other parents that are on this journey right now, probably at the early stages and really needing encouragement, on the road ahead. So we appreciate you coming on. It was a pleasure talking with you.
The website will be realwordswithsam.com.
And
that's the name of the book. He also has a Facebook page and an Instagram page. It was mostly just questions that he's been asked and his answers to them. It's just Real Words with Sam on Instagram and Facebook. You just search for that.
This was so good. Really, really, we are so thankful. And we know this is going to be so helpful to families that are looking into spelling as a modality for their child, for their teen, for their adult child, and families that are already in it. And just, it's so incredible. The community is incredible. And it's a beautiful thing to get the word out. So thanks for coming on today, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate you.
You bet.
Check out the show notes to find resources and contact information for today's episode.
Yeah, and if you like the podcast, please share it with others and be sure to follow us so you won't miss an episode.
We love to hear from our listeners, so leave us a comment or rating and connect with us on social media or on our website at hopeonthehardroad.org.